Hey everyone, I am back. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. I hope that you have had a wonderful week. For those of you who are brand new to Mental Health Moment, and this is your first mental health moment, I'm Dr. Nekeshia Hammond, host of Mental Health Moment. Let me know in the chat where you are tuning in from here today. I reside in the Tampa Bay area of Florida, and I'm actually back in Florida. Excuse me, after spending time in colder climates for the last couple of weeks, which you all know. For those of you who do know me and tune in on Mental Health Moment, you know how much I love my sunny Florida, even though it's actually been cold. It's January, so it's been cold a little bit, but nonetheless, it's finally warming up, so that's a good thing, right? But let me know again in the chat where you're tuning in from. It's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. I always do announcements really quick first, and then for those of you who are new, I do announcements first, and then dive into the mental health moment. If you're new to Mental Health Moment, essentially Mental Health Moment with Dr. Hammond is all about how do you work on becoming the best version of who you are so you can show up powerfully for you, for yourself, and for the people around you. So I talk about different mental health strategies and wellness strategies each week, which hopefully very practical strategies that you can start to implement in your life to work on being a better version of yourself. One of my announcements, I announced it last week. It kind of already passed, but this past or yesterday, Monday, I was speaking for the Women Who Lead Summit. However, it's still going on. So if you are on LinkedIn, it is pinned to my LinkedIn of how to register if you're still interested in registering for that summit. It's still a great summit. It's the Women Who Lead Summit hosted by the amazing Nina Perez. So that's still going on. Again, the link is actually it's on my website as well, drnekeshiahammond.com, or on my LinkedIn, it's actually pinned. The post is pinned with the link for that as well. If you want to register, it is all about well-being. It's all about mindset. It's all about how to, again, work on the best version of who you are also as women leaders. That's what the summit is about. So if you're interested in that, it's virtual, it's completely free to register. Then again, be sure to head on over there. The other announcement I have is March. Yes, March. I don't have all the information yet and the link to register, so I'll definitely let you know as soon as I get it. But I will be speaking at another women's conference. Actually, I do speak at other conferences besides women's conferences, but it just so happened this time of year that I've been getting a lot of calls for women conferences, which is all good. But I will be speaking at another women's conference, so I will let you all know once I have that link and that information to register for that, which is also virtual as well. And it is about mind, body, spirit, and balance. Which, of course, for some of you who know me, know I talk a lot about work-life balance because it's a real issue, and burnout is a real issue. But there's a lot we can do to prevent it, which we're going to talk about today, actually. Those are my two announcements for today. Again, for those of you who are just starting to join here, it's Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. But as promised, I will do my best. Myself and my team will do our best to update drnekeshiahammond.com, the events page on there with where I will be speaking this year, whether it's virtual or in person. And if it's open to the public, then we'll put all the information on there as well. Because I know some of you have asked me where I'm going to be, and we're trying to update that as much as possible. Those are all my announcements. Today's mental health moment is all about, one of my favorite topics because I wrote a book about it, our mindset, right? But I'm going to give you a couple of practical things for you to think about when it comes to making the mindset shifts that you need to prevent burnout. Because I may be biased as a psychologist by training, but our minds are very powerful. Your mindset and your perspective, no, it doesn't solve all your problems, but it really, really, really can help you get through in a lot of spaces, whether it's a space you're in right now where you're like, things are great, they're so amazing, but I don't even know how to handle that, because it happens sometimes, right? The good stress, if you will, or if you're in a space where you're like, right now, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm so burnt out already, or I'm about to hit burnout. Either space that you're at, your mindset is really, really important. So I'm gonna share with you today a couple of practical tips to think about really shifting your mindset, as I mentioned, because we all tell ourselves stories throughout the entire day, frankly. We say a lot of things to ourselves. We have a lot of self talk. Most of it, by the research, is negative, but there's things that you can do again to shift the way you're thinking so that you can work on taking care of yourself and physically thriving and emotionally thriving and spiritually, right? Like thriving in different areas of our lives. But one of the things that I want you to think about is, especially when it comes to the notion of I work with a lot of leaders and self-care, and we've talked before on Mental Health Moment at length about how self-care isn't selfish and all the things. And sometimes you may be in the boat, and it's okay if you are. This is a non-judgment zone. But you may be in the mindset of saying, I have to do it all. I have to be everything to everyone and do it all at the expense of myself, right? Like that may be something that you're telling yourself, right? When we're talking about mindset, it's like, what are the things that you're thinking right now? How can you work on shifting that thought process so you can get to the point where you're living a healthier life? So one of the ways to think about it is, if you have that mindset, and I will admit, I some of you who are not new to Mental Health Moment, I've told this story many times, but I definitely know, not just professionally as a mental health professional, but also personally, like I really get thinking like that because I used to think like that. Like you have to do it all at the expense of yourself, right? Like, so don't take care of yourself, do everything else, take care of everyone else, and do whatever your work responsibilities or whatever you have around you, but then you're last on the list, which is not a healthy place to be. So instead, if you're thinking like that, try to start telling yourself that it is okay for you to prioritize yourself, right? And even if you don't believe it at first, that's not an uncommon thing to be like, wait, prioritize myself. I've never done that. That's okay. But start telling yourself that again. So when you get into that mindset where you're telling yourself, I got to do it all, I got to be it all, and I'm last on my list as far as your prioritization of yourself, start to get into the mindset where you're telling yourself, it's okay for me to prioritize myself because it is. It is not selfish for you to prioritize taking care of yourself. Okay. And welcome again for those who are still starting to join here. So that's one way to work on the mindset shift. Now, I do want to pause before I give you, because I'm going to give you a couple today, because I'm trying to make this, I'm trying to teach by example today for you all. But I do want to pause and say, because I know this always is a question I get asked. What if you don't believe the new thing that you're starting to tell yourself? Right? Like, what if I hear that all the time, actually. What if you tell yourself something, and because we have these internal battles sometimes. I was just talking about that actually the other day. I think it was, I don't even know what it was, a podcast interview or conference or somewhere. But I was talking about this, how we can tell ourselves things, and then we fight with ourselves sometimes, right? And then we go, "No, that's not true." Right? Like we can get into those internal battles, but even if you don't believe it at first, keep telling yourself these things, because over time, you're working on rewiring your brain, retraining your brain to believe a different story that you are telling yourself. Right? We all tell ourselves stories. We literally, in our heads, we think about different things, we tell ourselves different things about ourselves, and some of them are not true. Okay. Welcome. Thanks again for joining here. Dr. Hammond here with your mental health moment. Today we're talking about mindset shifts in order to prevent burnout, especially, I mean, we're in the start of a new year. It's crazy because before you know it, it'll be like the end of this year, right? But we're in the start of a new year. There's a lot of new energy. A lot can happen: good things, bad things, disappointments, celebrations. Like, right? Like we don't know, but there's also a way that you can work on preventing yourself from burning out, or if you're already in that mode where you're just so overwhelmed, so stressed out, to kind of reverse that and be in a healthier place. And one of the ways is through your mindset, right? So okay, so the first one again is, if you have that attitude of I got to do it all, to start telling yourself that you are allowed to prioritize yourself. The next thing, ooh, and this is a big one. I'm gonna share my personal story on this as well. For those of you, and let me know in the comments if I'm gonna share a couple of different examples. If you can relate to it, just say yes in the comments. So if you've ever thought to yourself, like, I just have to do everything, I have to do it all. I have to put myself last because I have so many other things to take care of. Just put yes in the comment, right? And it's okay if the answer is yes. Like, it's okay if you are currently at that place mentally, or you used to be at that place. That's okay. No judgment zone. But let me know in the chat. The next one is another common thing that we tell ourselves, which is not true, is that if you rest, if you take a break, that you're lazy, right? Like, I remember I used to think like that, you all. Heaven forbid I took a break. That means you're lazy, right? It's something you have to unlearn. And again, if you can relate, put yes, and just know, I hope you're seeing other people's comments that you're not alone in this. Because sometimes we tell ourselves all sorts of things that are not true. Like, oh, we're alone. We're the only person who thinks like this on the planet. I promise you that's not true. Um, not true at all. But it can feel like that. And I get that, right? We can get to different places. It is all good. So the next one again is, if you've ever thought to yourself, like, if you take a break or if you rest, that means you're lazy. So put yes if that applies to you. If you're like, yep, I think like that. And I used to think like that too. Right. So I am totally guilty of that as well. But the new thing, the new mental shift to make is to tell yourself that rest actually can lead to more productivity. And I'm not just saying this to be nice, you all. There's research on this. When we take the time to rest, it leads to more productivity, which is what many of us, especially if you're in that grind mode, or whatever it is, you're taking care of people, or you're taking care of your work or kids, or whatever it is around you, that you're just taking care of everything else except for you, and you're like, I can't rest because that means I'm lazy, right? Well, the research actually shows that when you take the break and you rest, it leads to more productivity. You're going to do better in whatever it is that you were doing. Now, let me put a pause on this. Okay? Because rest comes in different forms. And put yes if you can relate to this one. If you relate to that feeling of just thinking, like, if I rest or if I take a break, that means I'm lazy. Put a yes. When you have that mentality, it means that, again, we're starting to put ourselves last. We're not putting ourselves where we need to, as far as taking care of ourselves, right? But again, when you take the rest, I do want to say rest is a very subjective term. No, not saying to take a week break necessarily, right? And watch Netflix all day. Maybe you want a staycation, want to do that, it's all good. But it's obviously within reason and what is feasible for you, right? So you might be able to take a quick break throughout the day, which is allowed. Like, you might be able to take a break to eat, or take a break, like, let's say you work from home, take a break. I've talked to a lot of people actually, when I was talking to different companies, and people were saying how it's so easy, even at home sometimes, to just be in like work mode all day, like every single second, and not get up from the chair, like just be in meeting after meeting after meeting, not get up out of a chair, not take the, you know, eat breaks that you need to, or stretch breaks, or whatever type of breaks that you need, that your body needs to, and your mind needs, right? So if you're, again, in that mode, it's important to know that if you take a break and if you rest your mind, your body, and your spirit, it will actually make you more productive, right? And again, it is a really common thing to think that way. So again, if you're in that mode already, then work on telling yourself things like, rest can make me more productive. Rest can be a good thing. Rest can make me more productive. And literally, it's almost like affirmations. Like, you have to tell yourself these things, even if you don't believe it at first, but keep telling yourself these things. Now, I will say, sometimes some of these things I'm teaching you today, they're very practical skills, things you can try at home. For We're all at different places in our wellness journey. There are some of us that have just really deep rooted difficulties because of things that happened in our childhood, or trauma, or whatever it is. So I definitely don't want to gloss over that or minimize. Sometimes you can try different things on your own and be like, I still can't really break through of what I'm going through. I'm going through a lot of depression or anxiety or burnout or whatever it is. And you do need to speak to a mental health professional, which is okay if you need to take that step. But sometimes you don't, and you need to work on resetting and changing your mindset, right? So that Obviously, I wouldn't know because we're all at different places, but these are just some tips for you to try. Okay. Okay. So the next one is feeling like you're stuck or you're just unclear, right? Like you're just in that mode where you're just like, I'm always stuck, I'm unclear. Instead of when you wrestle with that thought process, it can really lead to burnout because you'll keep telling yourself, like, I'm stuck, I don't know, I'm stuck, I don't know, I don't have clarity, I don't know. Like that can lead to a lot of depression, a lot of burnout symptoms where you just get fed up or you just get so tired, physically tired or mentally tired. But instead, something you can tell yourself is that basically you're telling yourself that it's possible, that you can create change. So even telling yourself, I can create change, I can start with baby steps, right? Because a lot of times, sometimes we get caught up in something that we're not sure of. And you may be looking at something that's like 12 steps down the road, whatever it is, whether it relates to your family life or your friendships or work or whatever it may be. You're looking at 12 steps down the road, but really it's like, okay, you can do this. You can take the change, but you might need some baby steps, which is okay. Like you're allowed to take baby steps. It's allowed. Right. Um, and then the last one is that, oh, this is my favorite one. This is my favorite one, you guys. I'm gonna wrap up with this one. The last one, which is so interesting because I feel like a lot of us got taught this early on in our lives. Like I feel like somewhere in childhood, maybe society made me think this way. I don't know. But it's like this idea that with success, you have to make these huge major sacrifices, right? So like success means sacrifice everything. And again, including ourselves. It goes back to that same mentality. Put yourself last. If you want to be successful, you have to sacrifice all these things, right? Yes, sometimes you have to sacrifice certain things, but also your success can include self-care, right? So that's what and let me know in the comments if you've had that thought process or maybe that's something you've learned. Let me know. Just put yes if it's like um, you know, success to you means sacrifice. Sacrifice everything. Sacrifice your sleep, sacrifice your health, sacrifice your time, sacrifice your self-care. Like, is that the thought process that you've been taught or that you maybe cling to? Or those are the type of things you've been thinking, right? So let me know in the comments if it's yes. If it's not, and you're like, nope, I don't think like that, then put no in the comments. But I will say that if you are in that boat, to work on telling yourself that success also includes self-care because self-care is not selfish. You can be really successful and also, yes, there's some level of sacrifice with certain things and also you can take care of yourself and you can have both. This is an and conversation, not an or, right? And again, really common things, but the reason why I was sharing a couple of like very concrete examples today is because literally whatever it is for you, I promise you, there's something that you're telling yourself, something within your mindset. And for a lot of you that was saying, yes, 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 it could be that particular thing that I mentioned today, or even something else. And when you start to take the steps to change your mindset and tell yourself a different story, it can literally change your life, right? It just does. And honestly, whether you said yes or no, it's awesome to me. So if you said yes, you're being honest with yourself, which is amazing. And if you said no, awesome. Like that's not right. That's not the story you tell yourself. But the biggest thing overall, again, is really looking at the things that you're telling yourself and you're working on rewiring your brain. That's why people stress affirmation so much, but telling yourself a new story. So for example, and I'll use myself as an example. Again, y'all, years ago, I used to tell myself the story. Like somehow, some way, it made sense to run myself into the ground. I remember I've told this story many times, but I'll share it again when my son was about 3 or 4 years old and I hit like real burnout. And I knew I was not getting the amount of sleep that I was getting. I was not eating as well as I needed to eat. Like I was just doing so much and not at all thinking about my self care, which was like insane to me looking back, trying to do all these things. And then like just really making a huge I was just so exhausted honestly at the time, but really making that huge mental shift to be like, you know what? Yes, I need to take care of myself. And I started with baby steps. And then now fast forward, my son's 12 now. But many years later, I actually teach this to other people and other organizations about burnout prevention, but to recognize and just being a like 180 mental space, because I really had to make a lot of mental shifts to be like, no, I have to make myself my number one priority. I have to get the amount of sleep that I need to function. I have to, right? Like take care of myself. Like that's a big part. And I can be more productive and I can have more productivity and I'm allowed to take breaks, right? Like that's the thought process now. And it wasn't always like that, you all, but that's the thought process now. And it starts with your thoughts sometimes, but then you have to take action, obviously, and work on changing your life. But today's mental health moment was about the thought process and first starting to work on changing your thinking. It's not an overnight process by any means, like anything. It takes time, but you're here, yay, on mental health moment, right? To learn different tips. Hopefully some of you were taking notes today, or you can always watch the replay on YouTube. But, like really think about for yourself and write it down. What are the things that you're telling yourself? I promise you, you're also telling yourself things that are not true about you and how amazing you are. And then what can you do to start to replace some of that thinking so you can make the mindset shifts that you need so that you can start the process or continue the process to get the self care that you need so that you don't hit burnout, right? Even if you catch yourself, I mean, once you change, I'm going to believe that for you all. Once you change and you start to tell yourself a different story, it's going to happen. Things happen, stress happens, and you might kind of revert to thinking like your old negative thought patterns or whatnot. You can even remind yourself, you're like, nope, that's not true. Like, nope, that's not true about me, right? No, I do deserve the self care. Nope, I do deserve to prioritize myself. I am allowed to have success and self care. They can go together, right? Instead of just sacrificing everything, including yourself and your well being. You don't have to do that. So I those are my that's what I wanted to share on today's mental health moment. I hope that again, you jotted down some things or maybe come back to this video or whatnot and really start to put these things into place for you. Uh Burnout prevention is very doable and possible, but you have to be intentional. You really have to be intentional about it and continue to work on changing yourself, right? For the better. You're allowed. You're allowed to change. I give you permission. As I wrap up today's mental health moment, again, I do want to remind you it is very, very possible for you to work on changing your mindset. Working on this year, like I said, has just started before you know it'll be over, which is crazy. But really work on making this a great year for you, right? And being intentional about working on changing your mindset so you don't get to a place where you're so overwhelmed, so stressed out, so burnt out that it affects all the goals that you had for this year anyway, right? So again, I hope you put some of these things into place and again, think about your thought process, think about how you can change some of those thoughts, some of those negative thoughts that you're having to more positive thoughts and more realistic things for you that are actually true. And I will be back. Have an amazing week. Be blessed, and I'll see you next time. Bye, you guys.